Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Home Life Miracles weekly webinar. Today, we are going to discuss about Fintrac. What are the requirements? What kind of forms you need to fill? What are our office policies? It's a very important topic. So that's why we thought, okay, we should discuss that. And that's why in the email, you got a message that is a mandatory webinar. And because of that, we have hundreds of attendees today, and I think we have more than 700 registered. The attendees numbers are going up. Everybody's registering there. So as usual, for first few minutes, we are going to talk about the topics which are not related to today's topic because I want to give everybody a little bit of time. And another thing is, as usual, when I whenever we start the webinar, I always ask at the start that please let me know if you guys can hear me, if my sound, if I sound without echo, because last time some of the agents were complaining that there's lots of echo. I hope you guys can hear me properly. You can text me or you can send a message here. And let me see if anybody gave any feedback about the sound quality today. Let me see. First, I have to find where is my messages. Yep, I got the feedback. Great sound, no issues. That's good. Thank you very much. So it means you guys can hear me. The reason I was asking, because today we are using a new mic just to eliminate that echo, and I hope that you guys I sound better than last time. So before we start our webinar about Fintrac, I'm just going to take a few minutes and address few issues. One is that I found out recently from one of our colleagues that when that person was preparing offer, he just took out the financing condition because his client said, I'm already approved. I have financing approved way more than what I'm buying for. I have huge amount of down payment. And that person said, I don't need financing condition. So what our colleague did when that person was preparing offer by himself, not through the office, that person just took the financing condition out from that offer. Just remember that we discussed this before. Even if you're putting offer for Bill Gates, even if you're putting offer for the richest person in the world, whenever we prepare an offer, we always prepare it with a condition for financing, condition for home inspection. If it's a commercial offer, solicitor's condition, solicitor approval, both for buyer or seller, depends who you're representing. Due diligence, we always prepare offer with those clauses or those conditions. After that, when we present that offer for signing to buyer or to seller, then it's up to them if they want to cross out anything. So if I'm meeting with the buyer, I will tell buyer, okay, here's the offer. This is the third condition. In our Schedule A, it says that you need 5 days to prepare an, to get a financing in place, to talk to your bank, to talk to your mortgage broker and make sure that everything is okay with the property or your mortgage. If my buyer says, okay, don't worry about that, Rajiv, I want to cross that out, I'm going to initial beside it, then that's okay because I have to follow my client's instructions also. But just remember that our office policy is that never ever prepare offer without financing, without home inspection, and in commercial without solicitor approval, without due diligence, and of course inspection and home inspection, or sorry, building inspection will be there. Just keep one thing in mind. Whenever you're preparing an offer, whatever the standard clauses we have, whether it's for residential or whether it's for commercial, we added those clauses after considering lots of different situations. So those conditions, those clauses, or those warranties are to protect your clients, to protect you, to protect the other party also. So you should always prepare offer with those things in place. If one, sorry, it's the intercom. After that, if your client insists that okay, they don't want this paragraph number 3 or paragraph, then I advised you, but if you don't want that and you take an expert advice, you want to go ahead without this particular paragraph or without this particular condition, let's cross it out, and you will have to initial it saying that, when they initial, so basically, yeah, this, it shows that you suggested to them that this should be included in agreement, but they insisted on crossing it out. So make sure whenever you prepare an offer, always use what clauses or conditions we have, and later you can alter it by crossing it out and getting your buyer or seller's initials. And another thing is that there are still some realtors in our office who preparing offer with the clauses from 2018. Remember that in 2019, we revised lots of conditions and clauses and warranties. We added lots of stuff in there. And all those things we do, when we on day-to-day basis, when we get your feedback. We don't decide it on ourselves, sitting in an office that, okay, let's change this line there. We get your feedback. We see that what kind of experiences you got. You bring that feedback to us. So on the basis of that, we change those conditions, those clauses, and those warranties. So whenever you use Easy Offer, make sure you download 2019 Easy Offer email. There you will find the new condition, new clauses, change the older ones and prepare offer with the new ones. And if you are in doubt how to do that, you can give me a call. I'll explain it to you. And if you download, when you open the email for 2019 Easy Offer, there are instructions. It clearly tells you how you can replace the older clauses, how you can add the new clauses. So make sure when you prepare those offers, you use the new clauses, conditions, and if you're anytime in any doubt, instead of asking me or AJ after the fact when offer has been accepted, is always good idea to call us when you're preparing offer or before submitting an offer or before getting your client signatures. It's always good idea. Right now we can spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes discussing something instead of spending hours and hours replying to Rico or to a judge. That's the worst thing. You don't want that. So good luck with that. And another thing is, again, a few of our colleagues, they asked me in last week, they asked me whether we can do the multiple representation. Yes, multiple representation is still legal. Yes, you can do that. Whenever the rule changes, as usual, we will have seminars for that. We will have webinars for that. We will give you the updates. There will be a lots of noise in the media also. Treb also sends you the email. Rico will send you the email. So for now, there is no restriction. You can represent more than one client or customer for the transaction of the same property. So multiple representation is legal. It is allowed so far, but I think it's going to change sometime, in the summer. But whenever the change happens, then we will let you know. Let me see how many of our colleagues are already there. Then we should start. Yeah, we are almost there. We're just waiting for almost 100 more. Everybody's just turning on their computers. And let me show you another thing, guys. Uh, when you're logged on to your webinar, and on this computer, I'm logged on as a user also. So let me see what I see on my screen. On the top right corner of your screen, you will see orange arrow. Click on that. So it takes you to the left side. When it takes you to the left side, it just expands your whatever the you can call the dashboard. It expands the dashboard when you click on the arrow, and then you will see there it will say two handouts, and there will be a symbol for PDF. I recommend you click on those and download those handouts. So let me do that. Yes, when I click on that, it opens the PDF document in a new browser window. And then when I'm going to take my cursor on the right hand side, it gives me another white arrow which points downwards. When you click on that, it's going to ask you where you want to save those handouts. I recommend you save it on your desktop so it's easy to find later. So let me see, desktop. Yes. So the first handout, it is the Fintrac office manual. So that's the Fintrac manual from Home Life Miracle Realty Limited. And let's see the next one. And when you go, click on the arrow to move it towards left. Sample filled forms. Those are from the Fintrac. It's just a sample. We're going to discuss those today. So I recommend you download those also. But you will be able to see it on my screen, but it's just for the reference for the later. Click on that. Download those on your desktop. Yes. So I have downloaded both on the desktop, and I recommend you guys do that. So now let's start. What time it is? 6:40. So it's 10 minutes already. So let's start with the Fintrac, and let me go where it is. I'm gonna just bring my screen up, and I have to look for those Fintrac forms which I asked you to download just now. Give me 1 second. Okay, where did I download? I just asked you guys to download it on. Okay, filled forms. You know what? I didn't download it on this computer. I downloaded it on the other one. That's good. So I have to see my handouts. Yep, found out. So first one is the manual. Second one is sample forms. Okay, so let me download these on the desktop. Fintrac office manual, that's also there. Good job. Okay. Okay, let's start with the sample filled form. The first one which I see on my screen is the corporate entity identification information record. So before we go there, I just want to discuss few things with you. First of all, why we need Fintrac forms. Just remember one thing, whenever we are doing an offer, whenever we are representing a buyer or seller, you know we pay lots of attention to the listing agreement, we pay lots of attention to agreement of purchase and sale, but one thing we forget, that Fintrac is very important. It's one of the most important forms which makes part of any offer or any listing package. The only reason sometimes some of our colleagues they ignore it is that because we don't need any initials, any signatures from our clients on these forms, and we try to tend to ignore it thinking that okay, I don't need these initials, I don't need these signatures, so you just put it aside somewhere in your bag or your file, or you always think that okay, I will get it filled later. Just remember that Fintrac is as important as any other document in your uh, file or in your folder. Fintrac requirement is from the federal government. It's not government of Ontario requirement. It's from the government of Canada. And Fintrac law was, I think, came into effect in 2008. It is to prevent the money laundering and funding for terrorists. So Canadian government, they said they just want to keep track from where the money is coming and to where the money is going. What is the source when the Canadians they do any kind of transaction, from where they're getting money and to whom they are paying that money. So as a realtor, when we represent them in the purchase or sale of a home, huge amount of money is involved. So that's why Fintrac said, okay, all the real estate salesperson, brokers, brokerages across Canada, they should come under the Fintrac law also. So now, anytime anybody buys or sells a property in Canada, as a realtor, it is our responsibility to make sure we fill out the Fintrac forms, and we have to keep those forms in our record for 5 years. So that's the law. We have to keep that in our record for 5 years. So even after I submit my documents to deals at homelifemiracle.com, still I keep those records in my client's folder for next 5 years, so that I have the record if just in case for any reason, if deals call me and say that, okay, Rajiv, we never received the corporate ID for property 123 Main Street. I know that I have a record also, so I'll scan it and send it to deals department. So make sure you keep this record for minimum of 5 years. So now we know that for how many years we have to keep these records. Another thing is what kind of information, what kind of record we need to keep. So let's start with the commercial transaction first. Whenever you're representing a corporation, whether it's the purchase of a commercial property or whether it's the purchase of a residential property, whenever you're representing a corporation as a buyer or seller, you need to fill out form number 631, which is right on your screen. Corporate Entity Identification Information Record. So now the first line, transaction property address, this is where I'm going to enter the address of the property for which I'm representing my client. So it doesn't matter whether it's a buyer client or seller client, this is where the property address will go. Then of course your name, whatever, whether you're a salesperson or broker, your name will go there, and you can fill out your brokerage name here also. Then when you're filling out this form, that date is here. But remember one thing, this date cannot be later than an offer date. So remember this date cannot be later than an offer date, because if I'm representing a corporation putting an offer on purchase of 123 Main Street, there is no use of identifying that corporation after the offer has been accepted or after the closing has been done. I have to identify that corporation before the corporation signs on any agreement of purchase and sale. And when I say corporation, we know that the directors sign, but for us, it's the corporation which is buying the property or corporation which is selling the property. So remember one thing, we need to identify that corporation before the offer is signed. So if I have all the documents on my table to be signed, how I will go? First, I will ask my client to sign working with the realtor. So my client knows how it is involved, what is involved working with the realtor, what kind of responsibilities we have, what kind of obligations my client can have if they become my client. So first, I will request them to understand. I will explain to them working with the realtor. They will sign that. Next, I will ask them to show me their identification or help me to fill out corporate entity identification information record, so I know that this person or this person representing the corporation is the person whatever they are saying. So that will be my second step. After that, I will go to BRA, then I will go to confirmation of corporation representation, then I'll go to agreement of purchase and sale and all the schedules attached. So this should be your sequence for getting any offer signed. So remember that Fintrac is not for the later. Fintrac is even before your client signs an offer. So that is not just the office policy, that is also the policy of Fintrac regime. So federal government says this is how you should do that. Okay, let's see. For corporation entity, April 9th. So this date should be my offer date, or I can ask them to help me to fill this out even before the offer date. Then how I verify a corporation. So for this, the best thing you can do is you can ask them to give you articles of incorporation. Whenever you have articles of incorporation, if you look at the first page of article of incorporation, you will see that it says certificate of incorporation. So the first page is certificate of incorporation, and then rest of the 8, 10, 12 pages, those are articles of incorporation. So name of the corporation, it will be right there if it's a named company, ABC Trading Inc. But if it's not a named company, you will see it has a number only. It will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Ontario Inc. or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Canada Inc. So some kind of number will be there. So ABC Trading Inc. in this case, then corporate address, excuse me. When you read the article of incorporation, excuse me, in the article of incorporation, you will find the corporate address. So 444 Main Street, Brampton, that was the corporate address. So I should also write here Ontario and the postal code. So you'll file this information in article of incorporation. Nature of principal business, what they do, what is their principal business. So here, this client, they have retail clothing store. So I wrote that. It's not good idea to just write store. If it's a store, what kind of store it is, what kind of products they sell, so that should be there. So this client, they have a retail clothing store, so I wrote that there. If they had a restaurant, I would have said restaurant, takeout restaurant, or all, my point is just try to describe it as much as possible. Name of the directors. So article of incorporation will tell you who are the directors. So when I was reading for ABC Trading Inc., I found out that one of the director is Jim Smith. So I wrote Jim Smith here. Another thing, which article of incorporation will also tell you, what is the address of this director. It's a good practice. When you're writing the name of the director, it's a good practice to write the address of that director also. So when I'm writing here about Jim Smith, I'm going to ask Jim Smith to show me his driver's license. Then I'm going to take Jim Smith's driving license and I can add the address here also. Another thing is, if you read the article of incorporation itself also has the address of the directors. Okay, now number 5 is asking me type and source of verification record. So number 5 is asking me, Rajiv, how you know the information you filled out above is the correct one. So I wrote here certificate of incorporation. So I took all this information from certificate of incorporation. So remember that certificate of incorporation, that is the document which is usually the first page of article of incorporation. In day-to-day language, we always call it article of incorporation, but actually the first page is certificate of incorporation. So I'm going to fill that information from there. Then if it's a named company, on the same page, you will also see that it has a number also. So it can be ABC Trading Inc., but then again, there will be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Ontario Inc. So that's the number they're asking. But if it's not a named company, it's just a number company, then you will see this number is repeated there. So then this number will go here also, and this number will come here also. But even if it's a named company, it will still have a number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Ontario Inc. or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Canada Inc. So that should be there. Then it says attach a copy of corporate record showing authority to bind the corporation regarding transaction. That's another thing. Now they're asking us how you know Jim Smith has the authority to sign on behalf of this corporation. If you read the article of incorporation, you will see sometime there are more than one director. There can be 2 directors, there can be 3 directors. So if I see the article of incorporation, it says director 1 is Jim Smith, then director 2 is Mary Smith, then director 3 is Tom Smith. So article of incorporation will tell you that. Now here, how I know whether Jim Smith has the authority to bind the corporation. And biggest mistake a realtor can do is when they ask Jim, do you have the authority to bind the corporation? And Jim nods. He just moves his head and he say, yes, I can sign. The Tim and Mary, they are my wife and my son. Don't worry about it. Of course, you have to worry about it because Jim is going to sell this property, put 2.3 million in his pocket, or buy this property, make millions of dollars down the road, and what you're going to left with a big potential fine from federal government regarding Fintrac, big potential fine from RICO, and of course there will be big fine from Miracle doesn't fine you, but a Miracle will have to pay fine. And when we have to pay fine for your negligence, just guess that from where we deduct it. Yeah, you guys know from where we will deduct it. Okay, so never ever believe just because your client said that I have the authority to bind the corporation. If there are 3 directors, it means we need signatures from all 3 on any listing we get signed, any offer we get signed, any amendment, any waiver, any kind of document where ABC Trading Company Inc. is being represented as a buyer or seller, we need all 3 directors' signatures. The only thing you can do is just to save yourself is if they can provide you, say, any amendment to article of incorporation, which says that, okay, we are 3 directors here, but Jim Smith has the authority to sign on our behalf. So, or minute book copy of the minute book which says that, okay, we had a meeting of the corporation. In the meeting of the corporation, Mary, Jim, and Tim, they all decided that any documents to represent the corporation or any contract to represent the corporation will be signed by Jim only. Yes, that's one way of doing it. But remember that we need to see something like that. And if I'm not sure that, okay, whether this document is the adequate document, whether this document proves what Fintrac asked for, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just ask all three to sign. Or I can simply say that, okay, you know what, let me get signature from all three of you, but if you have any doubt, let me call my office and I will ask my compliance officer for Fintrac to verify whether I just need Jim Smith signatures, or I need, excuse me, other two parties signatures. And for Home Life Miracle, the compliance officer is myself, Rajiv Datta, and you guys know my phone number, but if you don't know, it is 647-297-0699. And if you have already downloaded Office manual, this is Home Life Miracle Reality Limited's brokerage, office policy, and Fintrac manual. If you scroll this down, and let me take you to a page, yes, this is Home Life Miracle Reality Limited's compliance regime. Name of broker of record, Ajay Shah. Name of compliance officer and contact detail, Rajiv Datta, 647-297-0699. And then we have an auditor. Also, auditor's name is Abhi Trivedi, and her phone number is 647-889-3107. So what are the responsibilities? My responsibility is to make sure that Home Life Miracle, its representatives, its brokers, its salesperson, and the brokerage itself, it works as per federal government's requirement for the Fintrac. And Abhi Trivedi's job is to oversee whether I'm doing my job properly or no, whether I'm missing some things, I'm making some mistakes or errors. So then she will advise me, Rajiv, let's improve this policy. I think this is where you are lacking. And then, of course, with the help of our broker of record, Ajay Shah, Abhi Trivedi, and me, then we will see that how we can improve, how Home Life Miracle, follow the rules, whichever the federal government says you have to follow regarding the Fintrac. So this Fintrac is that serious. You guys now know that you don't please ignore it just because you don't need your client's signatures. So now here. So anytime you have any doubt whose signature I should get on this offer or this listing, give me a call and I'll explain it to you. But article of incorporation will tell you each and every director who is in the corporation. And if you don't have anything to prove that only one director has the signing authority, it means all three has to sign. Just keep one thing, unless and until you have something, minute book, any amendment to article of incorporation, or anything like that which says Jim Smith has the right, it means Mary and Tim also has to sign. So keep that thing in mind. And another thing you can do, just get everybody's email addresses. These days we can get, offer signed on digital signatures also. But it's always good idea to follow the law instead of facing the law later. Okay. So what does this tells us? That whenever we are representing a corporation, we have to get article of incorporation, and we have to keep those article of incorporation in our record for minimum of 5 years. This is the requirement. Now, another thing, say that you're putting a commercial offer, and right now you have only individual whose name is there as a buyer, and you know that before closing that individual is going to create a corporation. So then what you can do, okay, I'm putting offer on Jim Smith's name. Jim Smith doesn't have a corporation, so I'm going to ask Jim Smith to show me his driver's license. I'm going to fill out individual identification, and before closing, when Jim creates a corporation, then I'm going to ask Jim to give me article of incorporation also, and at that time I'm going to fill out corporate information record. So this is how the commercial offer goes. And one more thing, you have to remember that anybody who is, even if not a director, but owns 25% or more shares in this corporation, that person has to be identified as per Fintrac. So anybody who owns 25% or more shares, that person should be identified the way we are identifying Jim Smith, the way we are taking his address, the way we are writing down everything where he lives. So you should do that. So how you identify the directors and how you identify the shareholders which has 25% or more shares, for that we are going to use individual identification. So I'm going to show you that form in just few minutes. So let's go here. I'm writing there. Fintrac is asking me how you got this information. So I used article of incorporation to get this information. Okay. Now let me scroll down to next page. Give me 1 second. Verification of other entity, if applicable, is going to be very rare that you will have to fill out this. It's usually is that when you know that this corporation is acting on behalf of another corporation. So it's very rare you're going to fill this out. But if you are in doubt that this corporation is representing another corporation to buy a property, then let me know and I can guide you from there. So verification of third party, again, that's going to happen only if you think this corporation is representing another corporation to buy the property. Now, in column C, Fintrac is asking whether it's a low risk client or high risk client. Canadian corporation, which has office in Canada, is usually considered as low risk corporation. Medium risk, usually we don't see that, is either low risk or it just goes to high risk. High risk is foreign corporation based in another country or very high risk country. So far in Fintrac, the only high risk country we have is North Korea. So anytime anybody buys a property from a corporation which is in North Korea or individual which resides in North Korea and they buy the property, then please contact me and then I will help you how we're gonna handle that. So most of the time, what you guys will do is you're gonna represent a corporation which has the direct Canadian directors, Canadian shareholders, or which has an office in Canada. So most of the time, you will have low risk, but anytime whenever you see situation which is not usual, call me, ask me, I will help you, and then we go from there. Then comes the next part, the business relationship, section D. As per Fintrac, whenever we are representing a corporation twice in 5 years, it means we are developing a business relationship with them. Now, at that time, Fintrac wants us to verify that whatever the record we have, that is up to date. So say in 2019, I represented a corporation to buy a restaurant. So corporation purchased the restaurant through me. I took their article of incorporation. I have that in record. So after a couple of years in 2022, the same corporation said, Rajiv, you know what? We want to sell this restaurant and we want to buy another business. So what is the first thought which will come to my mind? The first thought will be, oh, I already have their article of incorporation. That's fine. So I'm just going to take those article of incorporation out, fill another form, or I don't even need to fill another form because I have identified this corporation in 2019 when they purchased this business. So Fintrac says that's a big no-no. Whenever you're going to represent a client twice in 5 years, you make sure you take all the measure to make sure that your record is up to date. So what I'm going to do at that time in 2021, I'm going to ask them to give me their article of incorporation again, and I'm going to ask them if there's new shareholder or new director which they added. If they did, of course I'm going to take all the information as we take for Jim Smith. Excuse me. So these are the things we have to keep in mind. So section D means you have a business relationship with this party, and then what I do, what they purchased, I tick mark, they purchased commercial property through me. Measures taken to monitor business relationship. So I wrote here, obtain the article of incorporation again and check the name of the directors and obtain their IDs. So I check the name of the directors. I asked them to give me minute book if anybody else became director or any shareholder they have who has more than 25% share. And if they have, I will take their ID also. So this is how you fill out section D. Let's go to next page. Receipt of fund record. I'm going to come back to this form later. Before that, I'm going to go to individual identification. Let me find out that form. Individual identification. This form you're going to fill out most of the time because individual identification goes with even commercial properties, it goes with all the residential properties. And as I was explaining to you, that Fintrac policy is that whenever you're buying or selling a home in Canada, realtors they have to identify their client. But Home Life Miracle Realty Limited has a policy that whenever you're representing a client, whether it's for sale or purchase, or whether it's for a lease, or whether you're acting as a landlord or you're a tenant, we have to fill out individual identification information record. So remember that brokerage has its own Fintrac policy where we try to go one step further to protect our salesperson and brokers from any potential fines from Fintrac or any potential fine from RICO. So we added this policy not just for the purchase or sale of a real estate property, any lease, whether you're presenting a landlord or tenant, you have to fill out individual identification information record and the corporate identity also. So here, how I fill out individual identification. So what I'm gonna do, when I'm meeting my client Jim Smith, I'm going to ask him to show me his driver's license. So remember the IDs which are we are allowed to take are driver's license, we can take passport, we can take the Ontario photo ID card. Lots of people who don't drive, Ontario government issue them what you call photo ID. You can use that also, the photo ID. The only thing which you cannot use is health card. In Ontario, we are not supposed to take anybody's health card to identify them for any kind of transaction. So health card is big no-no. So Jim Smith is actually a buyer client. He's putting offer on 123 Main Street, Brampton. So what I did, I put that address here. Sale representative, that's my name. This is my brokerage name. Then the day when I'm filling out this, that's April 9th. And remember that April 9th cannot be after the offer. I have to fill this form even before I'm getting agreement of purchase and sale sign, because Jim Smith is signing there as a Jim Smith, and unless and until I see his ID, I don't even know if Jim Smith is Jim Smith. So I'm going to request him to show me his photo ID, whether it's a passport, driver's license, Ontario health card, or not, sorry, health card, Ontario photo ID. We can't take health card. Or in the extreme circumstances when the client, which is going to be very rare, client doesn't have any kind of ID, then we can request them to show us their sin card. But I don't recommend you take sin card as ID. It's always good idea to go for driver's license, Ontario photo ID card, or passport, because almost everybody has that. So once Jim Smith shows me that card, then I'm going to add property address, of course, my name, brokerage name, the date when I'm filling this out. After that, verification of individual, full legal name of individual. So the card said his name is Jim Smith, so that's there. Address on the driving license, this is one I took from there. Date of birth, that is available on driver's license. Nature of principal, business or occupation. Here, most of the time, realtors, our colleagues, they just see that right there, self-employed, driver, or I have seen that general labor. Those are not the descriptions which Fintrac wants. Fintrac wants you to tell Fintrac on this form what is their job status and where they're working. So in this case, Jim Smith is a shipper and he works at ABCD Steel Zinc. So I took that information, wrote that down there. Now you must be asking me how I verified this information. Remember that I'm a real estate agent. I'm not a secret agent. If Jim Smith told me he works at ABCD Steel Zinc, he's a shipper, that's more than enough for me. If Jim Smith is lying, that is between federal government and Jim Smith. Let them come and take him. Okay, now another thing, I just gave an example. Jim Smith doesn't do both jobs. I just put there another example. If Jim Smith was a truck driver, then what I would have filled, excuse me, this is what I would have filled: truck driver with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and carrying. Because Jim Smith told me that he drives truck, but he has his own corporation. So 12345 is his numbered company. So I'm gonna write there truck driver with 12345 Ontarioing. If Jim Smith was say driving truck for Canadian Tire, then I would have just typed that here. So whatever the company name is, you're gonna type that here. So we know the employer and we know his principal business. He's a truck driver. So just driver or just truck driver is not enough. Federal, provincial, territorial, government issued photo ID. So type of identification document. I asked Jim, and Jim had the driver's license. So I took that driver license, wrote that here. This is driver's license. Document identifier number. That's the driver license number. So Jim's driver license was S12345. Excuse me. I put that there. Issuing jurisdiction. Um, Driver license is issued by provincial government. So it says here Government of Ontario. If it was a passport, then I would have written there Government of Canada. Country, Canada. Document expiry date. Jim's driver license showed that it's going to expire in 2020 on 1st January. So I wrote that there. So I took all that information from Jim's driver's license. For added security, if you want, you can take picture of Jim's driver's license, or you can take photocopy of Jim's driver's license and keep that in your file. But Fintrac doesn't have a requirement where they ask you to keep in your file the driver license. But remember that we were going through the corporate identity, this form. Here, Fintrac wants that you keep article of incorporation in your file for 5 years. But when it comes to individual identification, you don't have to keep that record. But I always recommend that keep that in your file just in case you lost this individual identification form or for any reason. If anybody comes back and asks you from where you took this information, you have a proof. But remember that whenever we are keeping clients' information, whether is the driver's license or is their article of incorporation, it's always good idea to make sure you keep that information safe. You don't leave that information on the printers. If you want to see that, not our colleagues are the best colleagues, but some of the offices, some other brokerages, whenever I visit, if somebody invited me, when I go to printer, and you know what I see on the printer scanner, I will see 10 pages of their clients checking account information because the mortgage broker asked them, they printed it, and then the printer didn't print for any reason. Then instead of going to the printer section and canceling that command, they just left. After that, somebody fixed the printer, and suddenly we have 10 pages of somebody's account statement, which shows how much money they have, what is their account number, what is their name. And I have seen driver license, I have seen individual identification filled, left there. I have seen people's PR card copies, passport copies in other brokerage. Our brokerage, everybody is perfect, and they are very, what you call, very much. Cautious how they take handle their clients information. So don't be like those agents who leave all that kind of information on the printers or in the recycle bins or on the tables beside the printers. If you printed something which is very important to your client, if printer didn't work, on the right hand side of your screen you can always go and find out what happened to that print. When you click there, I'm just trying because right now I don't have any problem, so I don't think it's going to show you. Usually it shows here. You see that here? It shows here where my cursor is. When you click on that, you will see a printer icon. Click on that. It's going to show you what are the pending jobs. So click on that job and cancel that job before you leave the office. So in digital identification, you don't have to keep the driver license in your record for 5 years, but I keep that, but I keep it secure, keep that locked. And if you're storing it online on any kind of cloud, whether it's OneDrive or G Drive, make sure it's password protected and don't leave your email logged in on the computer, especially in the common room. That's another thing. Some of the realtors do that, and lots of time when we turn on the computer, their Hotmail or their Gmail is logged in. So make sure before you leave that computer, log out from any website where you log in, including your email. So here we filled out the truck driver Government of Ontario issued the driver's license. The country is Canada. Document expiry date is done. So when your client is present in front of you, A1 is more than enough. That's what you have to fill out. That's it. You don't have to fill out A2, A3 or dual process or anything like that. This part is more than enough. The only time you go to credit file is that if client is not physically present in front of you. So then what you can do is you can ask them to provide you their credit report, or you can ask them if their mortgage broker can provide you the credit report. So it says individual's identity by comparing individual's name, date of birth, address information, above information in a Canadian credit file that has been in existence for last 3 years. If any of the information does not match, you will need to use another method to get client's identification. Consult the credit file at the time you ascertain the individual's identification. Individual doesn't need to be physically present. So we can use this if your client is Canadian, whether it's a PR, work permit, or whether the client is a citizen, but they are not physically present. Maybe they're working overseas. They sent you driver's license, and if they send you the credit file also, or you obtained with their permission from a mortgage broker, and this information matches the driving license information, this is how you identify that client. And this is the Home Life Miracles policy. If your client has a status in Canada, out of these three: work permit, PR, which is permanent resident, or citizen, but not physically present, at that time you can take their driver's license information, and we're going to obtain a credit file with their permission from a source which is reliable. Or and there are two bureaus, remember that, Equifax or TransUnion. Then we are going to match their information on driver's license with the information on their credit file. If information doesn't match, then we have to do more digging. We have to make sure the client is the person who client saying he or she is. So call me, and at that time we will find a way. Or if you anytime your client is not physically present here in the city, you're not able to meet your client in person, it's always good idea to give me a call, and then we will go from there. So if you have any time, any doubt about credit file, or any time your client is not physically present in the city, and you're putting offer for them first time, you haven't met them, it's always good idea, call me first. We will discuss the situation. We will see that how we can identify that client. Only after that we are going to go with the offer. So that's Home Life Miracle policy. So give me a call whenever you are in doubt when client is not physically present here. Now, another thing, these are the dual ID process when the client is not physically present. And we already discussed give me call whenever the client is not physically present. So we can take any of these measures also. We can take credit file, then we can identify individual's name or birth by referring to other kind of documents, but we will discuss that case to case basis. We will discuss from client to client. So give me call, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now let's see verification of third parties. So what is verification of third party? Give me 1 second. Let me see here. I just want to check out something. Okay. Yes, sir. Verification of third party. Verification of third party means when, again, we discussed that in corporate ID also. Verification of third party is when you think that your client is buying property on behalf of somebody else. Then there is a verification of third party. So anytime you have a doubt whether this client is buying property for himself, for herself, or for a third party, again, remember one thing: before making a mistake, it's always good idea to discuss with me. Call me. I'm the compliance officer for Fintrac and Home Life Miracle Reality Limited. Give me a call, and we will discuss the situation, whether actually third party scenario applies here or no, and then we will go from there. Client risk. Same like, corporate identity. Canadian citizen or resident physically present in Canada, that client is considered low risk client. If you're representing a client who has no status in Canada, not is doesn't have a work permit, is not a PR card holder, which is permanent resident card holder, or not a citizen, then that client, to deal with that client, give me call and I'll suggest. I didn't fell, it's my mic which fell. Okay, so for that, let me set up the mic again. Okay, so whenever you are representing a client which is not physically present in Canada or doesn't have any status in Canada, give me a call and then I'll explain it to you how we are going to go with that. But this is the scenario which 99% of the time you guys gonna face. Client is physically present, has some kind of photo ID. So this is where you're gonna be most of the time. But whenever the client is physically not present in Canada, always give me a call. Depends upon the client status, which country client belongs to, and what is their legal status in Canada. Then we will discuss from there. Business relationship, the same thing. If you're dealing with the same client more than one time in 5 years, as per Fintrac, we have business relationship with this client. So say I'm dealing with Jim Smith twice in 5 years. First one, purpose and intended nature of business relationship, residential property. This is what Jim was doing. He purchased the property through me, then he sold the property through me. Whether it happened, just now in 1 month, but Jim Smith purchased the property through me, then selling the property through me. So it means I have a business relationship with Jim Smith as per Fintrac. So residential property, I put that there. Then measures taken to monitor business relationship. I have verified the information and retained the latest information for record. So what is the latest information? Jim Smith's driver's license. So this is what I took. So I asked Jim Smith to give me his driver's license again because I'm representing him twice in less than 5 years. So say if my client is selling property and buying property, it means I have to check D because I'm representing the same client twice in 5 years. So what I'm gonna write here, if Jim is my seller and Jim is my buyer also. So when I took the driver's license at the time of getting the listing, driver license said that Jim Smith lives at 456 King Street. But when I've sold them the property, the driver license says that he lives at 456 Main King Street, but the property he's buying to 123 Main Street. So right now that address is not on the record, and we don't even know whether the property is going to close, whether actually Jim Smith is going to move to that property. So that information is accurate. So I'm going to just take that from his driver's license. But down the road, after 3 years, if Jim Smith says that, okay, Rajiv, I want to sell the property which you sold to me 123 Main Street, so I'm going to ask him to show me his driver's license again. At that time, my record will have the information where Jim Smith's address will be. Instead of 123 Main Street, instead of 456 King Street, it will be 123 Main Street. So this is how you take the information here again. And this is what I wrote here, just one comment. In section D, I have verified the information and retained the latest information for record. So basically, I'm telling Fintrac that because I represented him twice, I just took his ID twice. And this should be your common practice. Instead of just assuming that whatever the information I took last time from the client, that information is going to stay there, that's going to be my same information, just take the ID again. So that is our individual identification. Now, let's go to receipt of fund record. Let me bring that. Here, receipt of fund record. This form is the most misunderstood form. Most of the times, realtors, whenever the office asks them or the deal department asks them to show them receipt of fund record form, what they assume is that we are asking them to show us the receipt which they received from listing brokerage while they gave the deposit. Remember that is the receipt for deposit from the listing brokerage. Receipt of fund record form 635 is for the Fintrac. So as per RICO, as per Fintrac, how the deposit works. Whenever we are representing a buyer, and buyer prepares a bank draft or a certified check to give deposit, as per RICO and as per Fintrac, that deposit first comes to the brokerage which is representing the buyer. So if I'm representing Jim Smith went to bank and prepared a draft of $10,000. Doesn't matter whether Jim Smith went straight to listing company himself and gave the draft. As per RICO and as per Fintrac, first money came to me. So receipt of fund record, that's why you have to fill for your buyers, because you have to tell Fintrac from where the money came. So receipt of fund record, if the fund received in cash, Home Life Miracles policy is that we never receive any kind of deposit in cash. It has to be certified check, it has to be bank draft, it has to be check. We never ever accept cash. So this section D1 will not apply to Home Life Miracle because we do not accept cash. Now, if an account is affected by the transaction, complete this section for each affected account. Currency of transaction, Canadian dollars. Account number of accounts. So this is Jim Smith's account number because Jim Smith is a buyer and he brought a certified check to me, which I have to drop at the listing brokerage. Now, when Jim brought me a certified check, then certified check will have the account number, so I can copy that account number from there to this form. But if Jim Smith dropped a bank draft, that is going to be a little bit of problem because the bank draft doesn't have account number. So then I have to request Jim Smith, Jim, can you tell me what is your account number? And Jim is going to look at me that why I'm asking that, and that happens most of the time. If it's a bank draft instead of you know check. If Jim Smith asks me that, then I have to explain it to him. Look, as per federal government, the Fintrac, I have to put that on the form. I can show him the form. Look, where this is where I have to put the account number. But if Jim Smith says, sorry Rajiv, I don't feel comfortable giving you my checking account number or my saving account number, then I can say that, okay, that's not a problem. Then I can write a comment here, requested Jim Smith to give me account information, but Jim Smith has refused to provide that account information. And that's fine. We can't force our client to give us their account information, especially if it's a bank draft. But if they bring a certified check, then you can take it from there. So this was the first account which got affected when the deposit was prepared. It was Jim Smith's account. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was Jim Smith's account number. So Jim Smith went to his bank, prepared a certified check. So this money came out, the deposit money came out of his account. So here we are tracking from where the money came. So this was the first account which got affected. When as a buyer's agent, we received the deposit, we never put that in Home Life Miracles trust account. Most of the time, 99.99 percentage time, where the draft goes, it goes to the listing brokerage. So then we put the second account which got affected with this ABC Realty Inc. And what kind of account they have? Trust account. So my client is Jim Smith. He's a buyer client. He has a checking account. This is his account number. From there, the money started. Then it landed in ABC Realty Inc.'s trust account. So this is what I have to mention here. And of course, if I call the brokerage, ask them what is their account number for the trust account, of course, the brokerage is not going to give it to me because they have public money there and it's not safe to give that money. So brokerage is never going to allow me to have their account number. So brokerage is not going to let me have their account number. So that's why I put there NA, not applicable or not available. And then if I scroll down, reasonable measured record. Now they're asking me why those account numbers are not there. So measure taken, asking listing agent for information. So I asked listing agent, can you give me your trust account number? Of course, the listing agent most of the time, they don't even know unless the listing is done by broker of record. So these were the measures taken. I asked listing agent to provide me their trust account information, and they said, sorry, we can't provide it to you. So we can write here refused, not available, And then this is the measure taken. And what date I asked them? I asked them on April 9th when I took the draft to their brokerage. Then they are asking reason why that measure was unsuccessful to obtain the account number. Listing agent did not provide the information. So I asked listing agent, and listing agent said, sorry, buddy, I'm not providing you my company's trust account number. So that measure didn't go well. And this is what is going to happen. Nobody's going to provide you the account information. And for client, if it's a demand draft, you can request them, and if they don't, provide that to you, you can just leave it blank, and then you can write here the comment: requested client to provide account number, client refused. So this is how we keep track of the money from where it is coming and where it is going. So this is the second page of receipt of fund record. The first page of receipt of fund record is very simple. It's very simple. Basic transaction information, property address for which we are giving the deposit is the purchase of 123 Main Street, your name, brokerage name, the date we are filling out. Remember that this date should be the date when client prepared the bank draft or certified check and brought it to you to drop it off at listing brokerage. So that is the date when you're filling out this form. Amount of fund received. So in my offer, the deposit was 15,000. So I put that 15,000. Currency of fund received, Canadian dollars. So I put that there. Date of receipt of funds, when the money was dropped with me, that was April 9th. And this is the date when I'm filling out this form. So I filled this form on April 9th, and the money was dropped with me on April 9th. Type of funds received, check or bank draft. So depending what you received, you check mark that. And by chance, if you get a form from office where the bank draft is already checked, but your client dropped a certified check, you can always that cross this out. Remember that you don't need your client's initials. You can check, check the check. That's what you're gonna do. Cash we don't receive, we don't take. Certified check, most of the time, this is what it is, not the check, the certified check. So this is what you're gonna check. Purpose of funds, why the money was given to you: deposit for purchase of a home. So you should write this one like this: deposit for purchase of home. So this is very simple. Receipt of fund record. And if you have the copy of the check, then this becomes very easy. The next page where we are tracking the money. So remember that two accounts most of the time will get affected whenever you buy property for your client. One is your client's account from where the money came. Second account is the listing brokerage trust account where the money was deposited. So receipt of fund record. Let's see that. What other forms we have? Risk assessment. I'm going to talk about that later. Identification mandatory agent agreement. So say my client lives in a city in US. I found that lead online, and that person said, okay, I'm gonna buy a home here in Canada, or I have a home here in Canada, but I live in US and I want to buy that property. Never met that client, and they don't have any credit file, no information like that. How I will make sure Jim Smith is actually a Jim Smith who lives in New York? So then what I have to do, I have to request Jim, okay, Jim, you know what, tell me where you live. I'm going to find a lawyer close to where you live. You have to visit that lawyer's office, show that lawyer your ID. That lawyer will fill individual identification record and send it back to me. Jim Smith can say that, is that necessary? Tell him that yes, it is necessary. Is the Canadian government, the federal government's requirement. I have to do that. So now this is the agreement between me and that law firm who's going to identify Jim on my behalf. So here, real estate broker Rajiv Datta representing Home Life Miracle Realty Limited. Principal office is actually, our principal office is not Mississauga, what I'm doing. Our principal office, head office is actually Toronto, Etobicoke. So that should be there. Yep, now we are right. Identification agent, I found a law firm, ABCZ Law Office. Its principal office in New York, USA. Parties agree April 9th, the day we agreed. And I'm going to pay them $100 to identify Jim. They agreed for that. So I filled that out. And now applicable law, if this agreement is as per Ontario's law, so that I fill that. And then I'm gonna sign here, the other agent is gonna sign here, they're gonna fill out the form, and the person's name, Jim Smith, they're gonna identify Jim Smith. After taking his ID, that law firm is going to confirm back that yes, the person we met today is Jim Smith and this is that person's ID. So this situation is also very rare situation. So that's why whenever you are dealing with the client who is physically present here in Canada, you identify them using the form individual identification, and rest of the information I gave you, that was just for your information. Actually, you're always gonna talk to me first before you deal with the client who is not physically present in Canada. So individual identification form, form 630, when client is physically present here, and the corporate identity was the form when you're dealing with the Canadian corporation which has office in Canada and which has the directors here in Canada. So then we fill this. And remember not to forget to take ID from each and every director, and when we take their ID, with their ID we fill out individual identification, even for all the directors or any shareholder who has over 25% of shares. Now another form which you guys must have seen that, and we always request you to fill out for us, we always request our realtors, that form is, let me see that, where did it go, it was here, risk assessment form for brokerages. So risk assessment form is where we look back and we see that what kind of clients we represented, what kind of transaction we did, and then we have to keep that every 2 years. Now we don't meet each and every of your client personally. You represent us, you meet them, you deal with them. So we ask you to fill risk assessment for brokerage. So basis of what you filled out there, we prepare risk assessment for the brokerage. So that's why we always ask you to fill this, because we need your input when it comes to risk assessment forms. So whenever you get this from office, so you put the date when you're filling it out, this is your office, completed by, you put your name there. Here, you know when you're completing it for us to help us to identify, to see what kind of risk we have, you just put your signatures. Then on the basis of what you gave us, we will prepare one form for the whole brokerage. So at that time one of us will sign here, but right now when you're submitting this form to us, you need to sign here, put the date. Do you offer services that make it difficult to fully identify your client? We guys don't do that. We meet clients in person. We don't provide some kind of services where it's very difficult to identify our client. So of course you're gonna say, almost never. When was the last time you provide some kind of services where it was difficult to identify your client? You can say never or seldom. Those are the things. Do you offer electronic fund payment services? We used to do that, but we don't do that anymore. We don't receive any deposits using electronic funds. Do you offer fund transfer, domestic or international? We don't do that. We are real estate brokerage. We don't do that. Okay. Whether you deal with clients or provide product or service in the following geographic location, are clients' properties located in high crime area? No, we are peaceful people. We are Canadians. Most of our properties are located in normal metropolitan, kind of situation. That's where our properties are located. Do you or your client operate or undertake activities in the following countries? Any country subject to sanctions, embargoes, or similar measures issued, for example, United Nations. So far, we don't have that. The only advice which Canadian government gave us was the North Korea. So, but we will always update you from time to time. Whenever Canadian government says that you cannot deal with the clients from any particular country, then we will let you know. Okay, so most of the time is gonna be never, never, never. Any country identified by credible sources or lacking appropriate money laundering laws and regulation. Most of the time, this inform why I'm saying it's going to be most of the time never or seldom, because just imagine 99.99% of our clientage is either Canadian, permanent resident, or somebody who has a work permit and physically present in Canada. So most of the time when you see these forms, these fields, you will see that it's going to be either seldom or never, or seldom or never. But anytime while filling this out, if you have any doubt, or if you see that okay, any of these situations apply to one of your clients, right away give me a call, and then I will help you to fill out this form, or anything which you don't understand, give me a call and I will help you to fill out this form. So that is our form which we request you to fill out after every 2 years. So I hope you guys are bored enough, but remember that Fintrac is very important. So don't take it lightly. Anytime you have difficulty filling out any Fintrac form, let me know, and then we'll go from there. Now let me go back to our question answer, and let's see what kind of questions we have today. Okay, let me start. Most of the few first are about the sound quality. Thank you very much. Sound quality is good today. Yes, because I'm using mic. Okay, Rajiv, these webinars are fantastic. One suggestion would be to give a quick market update when you're seeing a beginning of every webinar for 5 minutes. For example, market is balanced. Yeah. So some one of our colleague is asking to give market update. So for that, let me turn on the camera. I want you to see me also. Good job. Where are you guys? Okay, so you guys can see me. I can't see you. Okay, market update. The market update I have is what you guys tell me, and what I see these days. Multiple offers are back. What can be the reasons? There are two or three major reasons. One is the interest rate. Most of the major banks, they just reduce the interest rate. That can be there. The buyers, they were holding back. They were sitting on the fence for long enough, thinking that the market will go further down. Now they saw that the market is stabilizing, so buyers, they are coming out and they're buying properties. Another reason is lots of listing agents, they are listing properties way less than market price to generate those multiple offers. That's another reason. So that's why we see that okay, property prices are going 100,000, properties are being sold 100,000 or 50,000 more than asking. But you have to keep one thing in mind: the listing price at the very first place is way less than the market price. The only thing is, whenever you see something like this, where the property is being listed way less than the market price, don't get carried away. It's always good idea to do your little CMA about that property. Just see that what was recently sold, which is very similar to this property in that area. Because the first thing your buyer is going to ask, yes, you're telling me this is listed way lower than market price, but what is the market price in your opinion? So it's always good idea to be prepared, look at the market price, do some kind of comparative market analysis before you suggest to your client what should be the price. So yes, the good news is the market is pretty good. Everybody's busy. I can tell you from the number of calls I receive every day, our agents are getting very busy. Buyers are getting very busy. We are getting a lot more listings. So this is going to be easy also, because now it's spring market. When in the winter or later part of the winter, when buyers started looking for the properties, the problem was there were very few listings. But now, because the weather is good, we're going to see a lot more listings. There will be a lot more choices available for the buyers, and of course the buyers going to come out and start buying the properties also. Let me see what is the next question. Where are the questions? Yep, I lose them. Okay, couldn't. Lots of agents are saying they couldn't find the forms. Okay, let me show it to you guys again because I have logged into this computer as attendee also. So on the top right corner of your computer, you will see a dashboard. There's an orange and white arrow. Click on that, and it's going to expand your dashboard. So after that, what you see is there's a mic talking Rajiv Datta, then it says handouts, and you see two PDF symbols. So it is right there. So click on that top right corner where the orange arrow is, and then click on these handouts and you can download it. Okay, now let me see what else is there. Okay, question answer. Where did it go? Why lose my question answers? Forms are there. Where are these PDF? So it's top right corner. That's a good question. Rajiv, we understand that we need it while representing the buyer. My question is, why do we need it for the seller? So, as per Fintrac, as per Canadian government, anytime there is a transaction happening in the sale or purchase of a property in Canada, each and every real estate salesperson who's representing their client, is their responsibility to identify their clients. So if I'm a listing agent, I will identify the sellers. If I'm a buyer's agent, I will identify the buyer. So as a buyer agent, I don't have to identify the seller. Each one of us, we have to identify our own clients. So listing agent will identify sellers, buyer agent will identify buyers. And as per Home Life Miracle Realty Limited's policy, even if you are representing a landlord or tenant, we still have to identify them. Yeah, what happens if you're representing a buyer and you're putting offer on a property which is not listed on MLS, and seller says that I'm not signing a listing agreement, so you're giving seller a customer service, or you're providing buyer a customer service, still Fintrac individual identification, you still have to fill out whether it's a client or customer. In case your buyer is your client, of course you're going to identify them, but seller, instead of signing a listing agreement, you're taking seller customer service agreement, still you have to identify that seller, you have to take their ID. And if you're representing a seller, you found somebody in an open house who says that, okay, I don't want to be your client, I want you to represent me as a customer, still you have to take ID of that customer. Okay, let's see what else we have. Mike, stay there, don't move. Okay. Lots of people, they're asking where we can download the, those. I think now you guys know. As a listing agent, we have to keep accepted offer for 5 years and declined offer for 1 year. How about as a buyer agent? Do we have to keep copy of declined or refused offers? Remember one thing, it's always good idea to keep record how you dealt with your client, what your client signed with you. You never know when you need those documents. Uh, Whenever you're making a file for your client, how thick the file can be. Even if you have 5 offers, 10 offers, from here it can be go there, but still you have that file. So what I do, and it's a good practice, I keep each and every document, each and every offer which my client signed, whether it's a buyer client, it's a seller client, I keep those offers. Never ever throw an offer, even if it gets rejected, or even if try to negotiate that offer for last 10 days and in the end offer didn't get accepted. Always keep all the documents. It's a good policy. And I can give you one example. I have the offers for my clients when we used to do offers on legal page site. So that was 2002, 2003. But I keep it safe. And another thing you can do is you can scan it, the older files, keep in some kind of drive. It's a G drive or it's a OneDrive attached with your email, and then you can shred rest of the documents. But I try to keep the originals also, at least for 3, 4, 5 years. And as a listing agent, remember that you have to keep every offer, whether it got rejected, whether it got accepted. Rejected offer, either you keep the full offer or you keep 801. So 801, remember, is always listing agent's property. That's why listing agent always requests you to submit 801, just in case if this offer doesn't go through, they don't have to keep all the 12, 13 pages. They can just keep one page, which is 801. So don't throw out those offers. Sometimes you need those offers in the court also, when you have to prove under buyer representation agreement you was giving this client services. Okay. Excuse me. Do we, let me take one sip of water. Do we have to take individual education for a parent who's going to fund 100% of purchase for son and daughter who's studying in Canada as international student? Remember that we have to identify our clients. So it depends who is going as a buyer on that agreement of purchase and sale. If the kids are going as agreement of on agreement of purchase and sale as buyers, then we need to identify the kids. If the parents are going on agreement of purchase and sale as a buyer, then we have to take parents identification. If the 100% funding is coming from the parents and your clients are students who are studying in Canada, is always good idea to keep note in a receipt of fund record that these kids, they borrowed money from their parents, and this is the country where their parents live, and this is how they funded this home. So it's always good idea to keep those tiny notes there. There is no harm. It's not a illegal activity. The parents, they always fund, do funding sometime for their kids home. So it's a good idea to keep that in notes and receipt of fund record. But you have to identify the clients who are on agreement of purchase and sale as buyers. That's your primary responsibility. Okay, I'm just trying. It's not, the screen is not frozen. I'm trying to understand what it says. We have only one Fintrac form for same buyer, regardless of how many offers. I think our colleague is trying to ask, uh, do we have to have one Fintrac form? Doesn't matter how many offers are there. Remember one thing, whenever you fill in digital identification, the first page on the top, it says property transaction type. So client's ID is same, client is same, but the last time that transaction was for 123 Main Street. Unfortunately, for a reason, it didn't go through. Now, the next time I'm putting offer for 456 King Street, of course, I'll have to change that information on the top. And I will ask my client if anything changed from the ID they provided me. If they say no, then I can keep the same ID. But for every transaction, I'll have to fill out the separate because the property transaction address will be different. Why not a copy of certification of incorporation is taken? Of course, whenever you ask them to give you article of incorporation, remember that the first page, it says on the top, certificate of incorporation. That is always there. So first portion, we fill out with the certificate of incorporation, and then the name of the directors and the addresses of the directors. We're going to take from article of incorporation, and then for each and every director, we take individual identification also. So whenever now, guys, just look at the article of incorporation. Any of you have, look at the first page, it says certificate of incorporation. What if the address of the director is different on his ID or her ID and then the article of incorporation? So maybe when article of incorporation, when this corporation was formed, at that time the address was different, now the address is different. So then you can put a note there. I took the driver's license. The current address as per the ID of Jim Smith is this. As per article of incorporation, the address is this. So simply, whatever the case is, put it in writing on the form itself. Does the age of incorporation matters while putting an offer? Nope. Age of incorporation doesn't matter. The age of the client can matter. If the client is less than 18-year-old, then they are not supposed to put an offer without having legal guardian or something like that. But no, corporation age doesn't matter. Did you say North Korea or South Korea? It is North Korea. South Korea is still okay. We have lots of imports from them. It's North Korea. Can we check online who's director of company? Yes, you can check on CRA's website, but that will be only if it's a federal corporation. So you can open an Ontario corporation, you can open a Canadian corporation. Yes, for Canadian corporation, CRA has on its website the information. For Ontario corporation, if you want to check online, you can buy a corporate profile. You'll have to pay, I think, depending upon from whom you buy, anywhere from $30 to $50. You can buy a corporation's profile also. So it can give you the information who are the shareholders, who are the directors. There are lots of companies, when you search Google, they will tell you that yes, you can buy corporation profile. Now, two IDs are required. Nope, two IDs are not required. Remember that you're going to fill just the A portion with the driver's license. If your client is physically present and they gave you your driver's license. If your client is not physically present, not in the same city where you are, but he or she is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, or they uh, they have you know work permit, then we're gonna go for the credit file or other forms of identification. If client is physically present, only one ID: driver license, uh, photo ID or passport, PR card, citizenship card, those are okay. In case of commercial lease, we will fill individual identification, but not any corporation ID. In commercial lease, if you're starting offer with Jim Smith's name, because right now Jim Smith doesn't have a corporation, of course you're gonna fill out individual identification. And before taking over the property, before completion of this lease, before the commencement of the lease, Jim Smith opens a corporation, then of course you have to ask Jim for article of incorporation for that corporation. And this is going to happen in most of the commercial transaction when you're representing a buyer. Most of the time, at that time, buyer doesn't have any corporation. They put an offer, and before closing, they create a corporation. So at the time of offer, you're going to ask them to provide their driver's license or any other form of ID beside driver's health card. You're gonna fill out individual identification, and when they form corporation before completion, then you're gonna ask them to provide you article of incorporation also. And for seller, remember that most of the time what happens whenever we are representing a seller, because we see Jim Smith all the time, so we just assume that Jim Smith is owner of the property. Guys, most of the time for commercial property, it is most of the time it is under a corporation's name. Just because you was talking to Jim Smith, it doesn't mean Jim Smith is the owner. So always check on GeoWare who owns the property. And if the property is owned by 123 Ontario Inc., we're gonna ask Jim Smith to provide his ID, and then we're gonna ask each and every director to provide their ID, and plus we're gonna ask for article of incorporation. I think I answered this. If client doesn't have a driver license, then you can ask them for passport. Ontario government also gives a photo ID. And then what else is there? There is a citizenship card. There's permanent resident card. In the last resort, you can also ask them to provide their social insurance. Welcome, AJ. You're gonna join us? Not yet? Okay. If I have three buyers for a property, two are immigrant or slash citizens, but other one doesn't have any status yet or have only work permit. Where did it go? Work permit. Will you be considered as foreign buyer? Yes, sir. Unfortunately, each and every buyer who's going on the title, they should be either permanent resident or citizens. If any one of them has a work permit, or they are foreign nationals which do not have a permanent residency, they will be considered as foreign buyers, and they will have to pay 15% foreign buyer tax. So remember that each and every individual should be either citizen of Canada or should have a permanent resident status. Only then they are exempted from foreign buyer tax. Everybody else is foreign buyer. Anybody on work permit, Yes, they will have to pay at the time of closing 15% foreign buyer tax, and if they get PR, then they get that money reimbursed. And foreign buyer tax, that's another thing we forget. Foreign buyer tax is only applicable in Greater Golden Horseshoe. So, say London. London is out of Greater Golden Horseshoe. Hamilton, the whole GTA, Niagara, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, all these cities, they are under foreign buyer tax program. Barrie is also under foreign buyer tax program. So each and every person has to be PR or citizen to avoid foreign buyer tax. What is the best way to complete individual ID when the client is not physically present in Canada? However, they have a guarantor who are viewing properties for lease on their behalf. The client will be coming to Canada on PR for the first time at a future date. Okay, so that becomes a client who in a foreign country, so you'll have to appoint, as we were saying, agent in that country to identify that client. But I can discuss this with you in detail. So give me a call tomorrow. So depending upon your client situation, which city or which country they live in, we can see that if we know any lawyer or any law firm there where your client can go and identify themselves. So give me a call tomorrow, and then I'm going to help you with this situation. What if the client is on work permit? I don't know what was the question, but if you're asking if the client is not, if the client is on work permit, then yeah, we still can ask them to show us their driver license if this question was related to individual identification. Study permit, is it considered as valid identifying document? If you are dealing with the student, a foreign student who are studying here, they will have a passport. They cannot come to Canada without a passport, and most of the students, they have some sort of ID. They take driver's license, but if they haven't taken the driving license yet, they have passport. And you can always keep their student permit in the file as second source of identification. If my client has expired driver's license and applied for renewal, then what is the best ID? Whenever you apply for license renewal, they always give you that paper driver license. So you can keep that paper license and plus the copy of their expired license. So then from picture, you can see that this matches Jim Smith, which most of the time doesn't, but you have their new license information also, the paper one. So keep both. Or you can ask them if they have any individual identification, you can take that. Their piece of that driver license, the paper driver license, and plus you can see that if they have PR card or passport. So this is how you can solve that problem. In Form 630 for ID, for leasing, do we check other? Please specify. And let me see. Form 630, what you're talking about. Let me bring, most of the time, whenever I'm talking to you guys, you always talk about forms with the numbers. My biggest problem is I remember forms by their name, not by numbers. So let me see. Where is my screen? Form 630. Which form you said, buddy? Let me see. Where did my question go? 630. Okay. Let me see what we are looking for here. Okay. So you're talking about this digital identification. Oh, this is the different form. Transaction property address, sale representative, then you put the information. And I think you're talking about the purpose why the deposit was provided. Yeah, instead of purchase of a property, you can just simply, where is that basically? Instead of purchase of property, you can say lease of the property. Same thing you can say about the receipt of fund records. Instead of saying that this is for the purchase of a property, you can always say that this is for Lease of a property. Yes, sir, you can do that. If it's for lease, then of course we're going to say it is for lease. Let me see next. Okay, on receipt of fund, I said that we never accept cash. Do other brokerages accept cash? No, I haven't seen any brokerage which accept cash. Even if somebody has a cash, the brokerage will say, okay, go to next bank, get a bank draft made, come back, and we'll take the draft. Brokerages usually don't accept cash. I haven't seen any. What if buyer gets the deposit fund from friend, family, or relative? Uh, if it comes to their account and then they make draft from that account, then we have to say that only this account got affected, because for us it started from that account, and most of the time you may not even know from where those funds came. But if the funds came, say buyer comes to you and say that, okay, I borrowed this money from my parents. Of course, even if you ask, parents are not going to give you their account number. So you can start from there. The first account which got affected, why was the parents' checking account. Then the money came to their son's account. That's your client who prepared the draft, and then money went to uh, listing brokerage trust account. So then you can, identify all three accounts. So started from parents, went to kids, from kids, it went to listing brokerage. Okay. For residential, if there are two individuals on offer, do we need separate forms? Yes, sir. If there are two individuals or three individuals, we need a separate individual identification for each and every person. Okay. Now, one of my colleague is asking, can we have live telecast of training happening at Mississauga office? Uh, no, we cannot have live telecast of training happening in Mississauga. First of all, if we start doing that, you guys will not meet us. Now you guys can see me. I can't even see you. I don't even know. I read your names here, and at that time I just try to imagine, just try to visualize who this person is. Most of you, yes, I can recognize by your names, but it's always good idea to meet in person. And there are certain trainings which are best done on webinar, because we need to see, the forms, we need to see the fields which we are filling. There are certain trainings which are always good when you do those in person. So say listing presentation, offer presentation. I will not do that here, when we are not present in front of you. Yes, we can try. We'll see if we can do some kind of listing presentation or offer presentation here also. But most of the time, those kind of trainings, we find that is always good idea when it's done in person. Yeah, I know that sometimes you have to get in your car, come there, or some of you have problems like you work in evening shift and you miss those trainings, or there can be other schedule problems. But remember that these trainings, they come at different times, they get repeated more often. But unfortunately we can't do each and every training on webinar. But at least now we have one training every week here on webinar. But there are certain trainings which I personally think are better when it's done in Mississauga office in person instead of webinar. Otherwise, believe me, it's very convenient for me. Now I'm just sitting here in my office. I also in Brampton in our Boveda and Chinguzi office. Sometimes I do this training from Mississauga office. Sometimes I just do it from my personal office. So it saves me lots of time also. But there are certain trainings which are better when you do it in person. So do we fill up new Fintrac form every time in repeat business with the clients? Yes, that's the idea. That's why there is section D. You know, every time when you deal with your client and you ask them to provide their ID, ask them again about their job. So basically, you are taking care of Section D. That's why the Section D is there, because technically Fintrac used to say that, okay, identify your client. So we identified our client. Now, Fintrac thinks that, okay, if you identified your client, maybe next time when you meet with that client, you will say that, okay, I have this client's information, I don't need it. So as per Home Life Miracles policy, every time you deal with the client, we ask them to fill out Fintrac form. And when you do that, basically you're taking care of Section D, which is business relationship. So we don't even care whether we are meeting client 3 times in 5 years or meeting client 2 times in a month for a transaction. Every time we do a transaction, we ask them to show us their ID again. So it's a good idea, it's a good policy. Just keep one thing in mind: whenever you're working with the client, whether you worked with them in past or no, whether you work them with 1 month ago or 1 week ago or 10 years ago, always ask them to show their ID, ask them where they work, and you're good. And Fintrac is happy. Okay, when the new realtors fill out the risk assessment form. So whenever there's a time for you guys to fill out the risk assessment form, we provide it to you. We collect it after every 2 years. So if you joined just recently, don't worry, it's gonna come back, and then you guys can fill it out and give it to us. And we at that time we email it to you. We keep it at the front desk of every branch, and then we ask you to fill out and give it to us. Do we need record of paperwork for each deal which did not go through? It's always good idea. Don't leave those out. Keep that record. I think I already answered your question. In case of two buyer, one is Canadian and one is from outside Canada, not Canadian, what happens in that case? They can buy the property, but the thing is, because one buyer doesn't have any status in Canada. When I say any status, it means PR or citizenship. So then your client will have to pay 15% foreign buyer tax, which they'll have to pay at the time of closing. And that applies to the properties which are located here in Greater Golden Horseshoe. Okay. Name on driver license considered valid for the whole form? Yes, driver license is a very good ID, and 99% of the time, this is the ID we ask them. We just ask them, okay, can I see your driver license? Some of the agents, they take the picture of the driver license, keep that in record. Some of them, they just fill out the form, but I prefer to keep record with me. So, driver license is a good form of ID. The only ID which we can't take is health card. Lots of agents are thanking me for webinar. Thank you guys. You attended in huge numbers today. That's another thing. I think the number of agents who joined today, our colleagues, we can easily fill a medium-sized banquet hall. You won't. Wow, it was more than 700 at one point. Haraji, the Fintrac is mandatory for both commercial and residential transaction type. Any real estate transaction, Fintrac is mandatory, whether it's a commercial, residential, lease, purchase, sale. Anytime you do a transaction as a realtor, as per Home Life Miracle Realty Limited and as per federal government, is mandatory. Federal government may say that you don't need individual identification when you're buying or selling your own home. We require that as per office policy. Federal government may say that you may not need individual identification form or receipt of fund records form when you're leasing a property. As Home Life Miracle office policy, you need for that. So anytime you do any transaction in Home Life Miracle Realty Limited, you have to have those Fintrac forms. Receipt of fund record, digital identification, or corporate ID, we need those. Thank you very much, everybody who's appreciating the webinars. Thank you. If all directors sign a paper I made, likely they have authorized only one sign, there is enough. Yeah. So somebody's asking if all the directors, they give in writing to us that, okay, we authorize this person or we have authorized this person to sign the papers on corporation's behalf, yeah, you should talk to a lawyer and ask lawyer whether this is the valid form. But if you know these five directors are there, so basically that is like a minute book of a corporation. This is how you give the authority. And if they sign there in your presence in front of you, and you know all these three, that these three are the directors and they have provided you with their IDs, yeah, I'll go and I'll ask, okay, this person to sign on behalf of that, on behalf of the corporation. But still I will take email addresses of all three individuals, and anytime anything happens in that transaction, whether it's waiver, it's amendment, or any changes, I will email it to all three individuals. So yes, that is a good document to keep in on your file. Hi Rajiv, what if I submit Fintrac form and I realize the date older than BRA and W working with the realtor signed? Okay, so somebody is saying that when I submit the form and I realize the date is earlier than the buyer representation agreement and working with the realtor, that's fine. Whenever I'm meeting my client, I will try to identify them as soon as possible. It shouldn't be after the offer date. I shouldn't be identifying Jim as Jim after Jim has signed the offer. Before Jim has signed the offer, that's fine. But if I'm not going to identify somebody in January of 2019 and then submit an offer for them, say December 2019. By that time, the information may have changed. Maybe Jim has moved, maybe Jim has changed the job. But if I identified Jim, say 1st of April, and then I'm putting offer 30th of April, I'm just going to casually ask Jim, are you working at the same place? Say same place. Good. I have the individual identification. So individual identification should be before your client signs an offer, whether as a seller or as a buyer. But when you're working for seller, we always advise that you get your individual identification at the time of signing a listing. Because if I'm signing a listing with a stranger, and stranger says, I own this home, I'm Jim Smith, I go and see on land registry the home is owned by Jim Smith. How I will know this person is Jim Smith unless I see a ID saying that this person is a Jim Smith. So remember that as early as possible, you should take ID from your client. I think I already answered the question. Rajiv, can I save webinar? And how you can save webinar? Okay, so you don't have to save webinar. We have a channel, it's called Home Life on Demand. So I'm gonna ask Ankita to email it to everybody, the link there. But you can do one thing on your email, in the subject, just type on demand, and you will see that Home Life sent that email few weeks back. If you can't find it, then text it to me. I will send it to you. But we have on-demand channel, so where you can go and you can see all the previous webinars. So this webinar also, by tomorrow morning, I will upload it to that channel. Thank you. Welcome. One of our colleague is asking, any update on condo market? You guys know that recently two projects, Mobilio and the one in Mississauga, Avia, and the Transit City in Vaughan, they are getting sold pretty fast. So that tells you that pre-construction market is also going up like the resale market. So that's a good news for realtors. But I personally, I don't want the prices to go up. Market goes up a little bit, that's fine, we get work. But the thing is, when the prices go up too much, when they go high here, then they crash like share market. And another thing is, we don't want prices to go crazy, because we want clients to still able to afford those homes, still able to get approved for the mortgages. So I think the market is improving, the sale wise, that's fine. But I hope the prices stay. I know as an investor, you're going to say that I'm not saying the right thing, but as a realtor, I'm saying the right thing. The prices shouldn't go up after a certain limit, because when they start going like that, again, the clients won't be able to afford the mortgages and we will have less number of deals. We don't want that. And we want people to afford home. We want people to own home. It's not a good thing if the Canadians can't afford the home. Okay. Sometimes you ask question and uh, I wonder, is there a real situation or are you just teasing me? If client ID is getting expired in one day, is that okay? Okay, technically, yeah, technically is right. If I'm identifying my client on, what's the date today? 9th April. I'm identifying my client 9th. The ID is valid. But otherwise, the common sense tells me it's always good idea to, keep additional ID for this kind of client whose ID is expiring tomorrow. But technically, legally, it's not wrong. It's still valid ID at the time when I'm taking that ID. So I'm fine. The rest we will find when the Fintrac does the audit, but I think it's okay. If agent is doing webinar on phone, then it is at the bottom of screen where it says handout. Okay, so one of our colleague, thanks Pam. Pam is saying that okay, if you're watching webinar on your phones, then that handout is at the bottom of your screen. So maybe if you're some of the realtors they were having trouble to find the webinar because I was showing it on the PC. So it is at the bottom of your screen. Thanks, Pam. As you mentioned in the form 3635, I think you're talking about receipt of fund records. Our duty is to ask for account number from the buyer from where the funds came. So do we ask for the account number from the listing agent or no? Yes, you are, as per Fintrac, you are supposed to ask listing agent for the account number where the funds are going, which is the listing brokerage trust account. And when you're gonna ask them, what is the account number of your trust account for the brokerage, this is the reaction you're gonna get. What? No, nobody's gonna give you, like if I ask somebody ask us, okay, we are giving you $15,000 deposit and give us what is the account number of your trust account. Most of us we don't even know. And even if we know, we're not going to provide a trust account number to any individual because that trust account holds public money. It holds millions of dollars, which belongs to public. We are holding that for the public till the day of closing. Nobody's going to provide you that number. That's why they have that printed form section there. You just have to check mark. Ask the listing agent. Next check mark is listing agent refused to give the account number. Okay. What if I'm representing my son or family member in selling or buying a property? Unless you're representing a bank and it's a power of sale, for any every other individual or corporation, we need individual identification. As I was mentioning, as per Fintrac, you don't need a Fintrac regime. You don't need an individual identification when you're selling your own property. But as an office policy, we need individual identification even when you are the buyer and seller. So for each and every member of your family and for yourself, we need that. One of our Andy Desire colleagues says, just want to recap that we have to always fill source of funds form regardless when we receive the deposit check. Receipt of fund record, yes, we always have to fill out. So receipt of fund record will be maybe a day after the offer got accepted. So most of the time the offer gets accepted, say if on 9th of April, my offer got accepted today. So my client brought the draft tomorrow. So that will be 10th of April. So I'm going to sit on 10th of April in front of computer, fill out the information from there. Yes, receipt of fund records you have to fill out when you're representing a buyer. When you're representing a seller, you don't have to fill out receipt of fund record. Okay, somebody said, Rajiv, I can see four icon, one arrow, mic, full screen, one hand. Okay. Somebody saying we cannot download. There is no file. I think there was a file. What I will do, I will ask office to email these forms tomorrow also. Most of you are saying there's no forms, but I can still see the forms. They are there. Okay, let me see. If it's not downloading, guys, I'm sorry, but you have to see that why it's not downloading. It has to do something with your computer. But I'll ask Ankita to email it to you. So I'm deleting all those questions which are saying that we can't see the handouts and we can download it because we'll send it tomorrow. Do we have to identify buyer and seller for multiple representation? Yes, sir. When you're representing both parties, you have to represent both parties. So each and every individual you're representing, you are going to have individual identification. And for buyer, you're going to have an additional form, which is receipt of fund record. But if you're representing only buyer, then seller's responsibility is the listing agent. So somebody asked for multiple representation, already answered. Yes, you have to represent, identify both clients, buyer client and seller client. Yes, Jasprit was asking. I'm logged into my phone screen. So Jasprit, yes, we're gonna ask the office to email it to everybody. Definitely, we're gonna do that because lots of pages they're logged onto phone, they can't see those forms. One of our representative is asking, colleague Jag, that I saw risk assessment forms on only for agent. It's hard to fill out. Yes, it is very hard to fill out on mobile phone. So don't try it on only for agent app. At that time, you can skip it. We're gonna keep that here at the front desk. After every 2 years, we do that. So whenever you guys come into office, the receptionist is gonna ask you at that time, please fill out this risk assessment form, and we're gonna email it to each and every agent when it's due. Is soft copy of the documents enough, or should we keep hard copy? Whenever we go to court, and AJ always talks about this, it's always good idea to keep the original copy also, because sometimes the court asks you for original copies if you have to go to court. So, yeah, if the transaction is, say, 1 year old, 2 year old, it's a good idea to keep the hard copy. And once you see that, okay, 2 year, 3 years, the transaction is getting old now, scan it, save it, and then you can shred the older copy. If somebody is borrowing money for deposit, how we fill out the receipt of fund record? So receipt of fund record, of course, at that time you can leave a comment on receipt of fund records that individual Jim Smith borrowed money from, say, Tom Smith, and then how he got the money. You can leave that note. But if the Tom gave check or draft to Jim, then you're gonna have to write that there were 3 accounts which got affected. Money came from Tim to Jim, and from Jim to listing brokerage. This is how we covered that already. Of course, Tim is not going to give you account information. Husband and wife are buying a property. Do we fill the details in one form or two? Yes, two forms. You have to fill out separate forms for each and every individual. If agent is buying property for himself or herself or for spouse, should he has to fill Fintrac for his spouse? Yes, for himself and spouse also, for herself or spouse also. Okay, if student is buying a property and parents are financing the property, do we pay the foreign buyer tax? You have to see the name of the buyer on the agreement. If the name of the buyer, the person who's as a buyer on the agreement of purchase and sale doesn't have permanent residency or citizenship, and you're buying property in Greater Golden Horseshoe, you will have to pay foreign buyer tax. Doesn't matter who's funding the property. All of a sudden, your voice is breaking. Okay, is it okay now? I'm fixing the mic. Okay, there's one of our colleague is saying there is no SIM card issued anymore, at least for last 6 years. Yeah, I got my long time ago. Yeah, so when I say six SIM card, so what is now? I think it's a paper format now. Yeah, if there is no SIM card now, oh, it means the oldies like us now we have something which you guys don't have, the newcomers. Okay, so if SIM cards are being issued, then you can take for identification that paper SIN document. So you can take that as identification. If agent's doing transaction for himself, then we do need to Fintrac form. Yes, as per Fintrac, no, but as per Home Life Medical Reality Limited, yes. For commercial lease, form is required to be filled. Yes, Jaya. Any transaction which you do in Home Life Medical as a realtor, Fintrac forms are mandatory. Is Fintrac form applicable to both commercial and residential? Yes, sir. Applicable to both. Any real estate transaction, it is applicable. Any transaction you do in Home Life Miracle, remember that you have to fill out those forms. What if the ID address is not where they're living? Do we still have to take ID address or where they're living? We have to go on the individual identification. I will fill out the ID, the address which shows on their ID. But if client tells you currently I'm living here, then I can put a note there. ID shows the address 123 Main Street as per Jim Smith. Currently he's living at 456 King Street. Hamilton Niagara also exempted from buyer tax. Nope. Hamilton and Niagara, they come under Greater Golden Horseshoe, so they are not exempted. London is exempted. One, one of our colleague is saying we should do live coverage of Mississauga training, but then we should make it mandatory for them to pay who's watching it from. Yeah, we should open our own Netflix. Okay. Is this webinar recorded? I'm deleting those questions which I already have answered. So guys, don't mind that. It's not that don't think that I'm deleting the tough questions. I'm deleting the ones which I already answered. Is webinar recording available? Thanks, Rajiv. Thanks, Rajiv. So I'm deleting those ones because I don't need to answer. I'm just gonna say welcome to everybody who's thanking me. I just wanna go. You're welcome. So when I'm saying you're welcome, it's people are thanking me. You're welcome. Not a problem. I thank you all the guys to attend this because you know that whenever you attend these webinars, you gain knowledge. So it helps us also, because you're going to do transaction, there will be less hassles, less fines also. I have a client who's in work permit. Can that person buy home? Yes, that person can buy home. That person can obtain the mortgage also. So talk to one of our in-house mortgage representatives or mortgage brokers. They can definitely help you. And if you need recommendation, call me and I can send you some names. Yes, anybody on work permit, they can buy home. Remember that anybody who lives anywhere in world, they can buy home in Canada and they can get mortgage. It just matters how much is the down payment, how much is the income. You can work, you may be living in some other country, never visited Canada, you can still buy a home here and you can still get a mortgage. It's just the amount of down payment you need. So talk to a mortgage broker. What is the due date to submit an individual identification form to our brokerage after the deal is firm? Nope, after the deal is firm. You should submit your, first of all, you should fill individual identification before getting an offer signed. And after that, as soon as practically possible, you should forward those documents to deals department. When you're sending the whole package, individual identification should be with that package. You're welcome. You're welcome. If the residential lease is a tenant is incorporation, do I need to fill out the form? Yes, residential transaction or commercial transaction doesn't matter. So if the buyer or seller is corporation, you have to fill out the corporate entry. Anytime I try to access the previous webinars on Miracle on Demand channel, it always asks me my name and email address. That's how the system is. I didn't create it. I know it's a nuisance, but it asks. But I think if you log in from the same computer, when you go there, when you try to type it, remembers you. You're welcome. And one of our colleague is asking me, need information on condos? Yes, you can call me after the webinar. Here, I'm going to answer the question which concerns everybody. Is it possible to advertise condos, which you, yes, the emails you get from us, you can advertise it on your websites, on your Facebook. That's why we send those emails. Why not? Is it true that TC4 is sold out? Yes, sir, it is true. TC4 is sold out. Yeah, it is true. Can you repeat out the golden horseshoe tax thing? Okay. So the tax thing is that anybody who is not a Canadian citizen or Canadian PR, if they buy property in greater golden horseshoe, they have to pay 15% foreign buyer tax. And that tax government charges you at the time of closing. So it becomes part of your closing cost. Greater golden horseshoe, rough idea, London is out, then we start coming towards Kitchener, Waterloo is there, Hamilton, Barrie, Niagara, the whole GTA, it is included in Greater Golden Horseshoe. So unless you're a PR or citizen, if you buy property in this area, you will have to pay 15% foreign buyer tax. If you are on work permit and you buy property, after that you become PR, then government gives you that money back. When that 40,000 is going to kick in for the clients, what 40,000? I think you put too many zeros. There's no 40,000. Who gives you 40,000? I think you're talking about the new program from federal government about where the what you call your federal government is going to become your partner in buying a home. So that's going to kick in from September. So far, the only detail we know is that government is going to pitch in maximum 5% for resale and maximum 10% for pre-construction homes. When you buy that, there are certain conditions. They're going to become your partner for sure, but the details will come in September. There are certain conditions. One is that the household income shouldn't be more than $120,000. Each and every purchaser who's going on title should be first time home buyer, and remember that first time home buyer definition is different than what is for uh, RRSP. In RRSP, if you don't own a home in last 4 years, you become first time home buyer, but for other programs you should have never owned a home. So once you own a home, you always are second time home buyer. What else was there? Yeah, as if I remember the numbers correctly, your mortgage and your assistance from federal government, which you get, shouldn't be more than $480,000 altogether. So, but details we're gonna get in September. When is the closing for War Condos 2022? Jag is asking, do we sponsor or represent any of the charity organizations so we can advertise on our flyers? There are lots of charity organizations, and I'm also always afraid to get involved in that from the business point of view. As an individual, I do, but from business point of view, because we don't want to get involved in somewhere where there's some kind of controversy later. I was reading news on Toronto Real Estate, sorry, not Toronto Real Estate Board. They always come there. Toronto Star today, there was an organization which got caught. They were supposed to help kids or poor kids, but they were using all the money for themselves. It's a big scandal. You guys should read it on the main page on Toronto Star. So far, we try to keep politics and charities away from the business. But as an individual, you can always work. There's a Wish Foundation. Then of course there is the Heart and Stroke Foundation, then lots of other organizations which you can help, and then you can become part of those and do the charity. It doesn't matter whether we use it for our business or no. I think everybody, in my personal opinion, should do that. But before they help any organization, it's always a good idea to do some kind of research for that organization, see that where they're spending the money. If residential lease is signed and it's in corporation, do we have to fill the forms? Yes. If it's the tenant is corporation, you're gonna fill corporate ID. One of our Pankaj, our colleague, he's saying, I'm watching this in Chicago. Stay safe in Chicago. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So I'm deleting all the thanks and all the requests for web forms, because the office is gonna send it to you. I don't know why you guys can't see that. Everybody's texting me that they can still see it. I can see it on my screen. I can see here on this screen where I'm logged in as the agent. Forms are there. Yes, I know it's there. One of our colleague is saying that we just want to let everybody know that Fintrac is followed by banks, insurance companies, everybody. Yes, Fintrac is followed by banks, insurance, everybody, and actually one of the major bank whose that bank's name start with R and second word is B. I don't want to say any bank's name on record, but I heard that that bank last year or year before that got fined more than $120 million for not following the Fintrac policies. So this is how serious the Fintrac is. So just remember that banks can afford to pay $100 million fine, but for us realtors, the fine from Fintrac is 4,000 per occurrence in per form. So remember that. And for corporations, it can be way, way more. And right now, Fintrac is doing audits in GTA for real estate companies. So we have to be very serious. So whenever you are in doubt, just pick up your phone, call me, and I will definitely help you how to fill out that form. Mhm. Okay, thank you. I'm deleting the thanks. One of agent is asking when we are opening office in Milton. Pretty soon. When we are completing agreement to lease, is spousal consent required? Uh, if you're representing the landlord, spousal consent should be taken. You're welcome. Jag is asking, was the best way of receiving funds from parents overseas? You know, it means if student is living here, the parents are overseas. Was the best way to receive funds? The best way to receive fund is through the banks. Just ask them to wire money here to their kids, and that is the safest way instead of going to a third party which you don't even know about, and suddenly you find out they took all the money. It's always a good idea to ask. In my personal opinion, the good idea to is get money wired. That's the safest way. You're welcome. Welcome. So, yeah, one of colleague Pali, he was saying it's a good idea if we can have Home Life Miracle's own page on commercial exchange. Yes, Pali, we're gonna do that. Actually, I forgot. I should have done that. Uh, Remind me again, Pali, tomorrow. I'm gonna get that page only for Home Life Miracle on commercial exchange or business exchange. Is Mobilio project still talk about Mobilio? You can call me after the session. I'll answer you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Can I exit now? Yes, you can. Thank you. I'm reading. Thank you. Treb is using our money for charities. Yes. So one of Jack, you was asking any how we can advertise our money is being used, and does Prem just suggested Treb is using money for charities. Yep, if you want to advertise, you can advertise that, because remember that when Treb is giving some money to charity, that is actually also part of your money. Okay, let me see. Attachment, I explained about you. When you're gonna shut down the webinar, when I answer all the questions. Okay. When we are going to have office in Markham, we're gonna pretty soon, and every corner we're gonna have a North York. Okay. Thanks, Rajiv. You're welcome. Which charity Treb is using? I don't know. You have to see on MLS. You're welcome. You're welcome. Any plan of opening office in Vaughan for him? Find one, then we'll open it there. Can we download sample fill form for record? Yes, he did that. Okay, guys, let me see my phone now. If any questions left there. And you're welcome. Everybody who thanked me, you're welcome. That's a good question. Rajiv, should we fill out Fintrac forms for pre-construction also? Yes, I always do that. I always do that. Whenever we are booking some condos for somebody, they already providing us ID. So instead of thinking, should I fill out the form or not fill out the form, is always good idea to fill out the form. Even when I'm working with somebody in pre-construction, I always ask them to sign working with the realtor. I take their individual identification and I ask them to sign BRA. If they're not feel comfortable to sign BRA for the whole GTA, I will ask them to sign it for that particular project and stuff like that. But remember one thing, most of the time builders they fill Fintrac, but if instead of being in doubt whether I should fill it or not, it's a good idea to fill it. Keep that form. I do personally. But most of the time builders they do that. Just remember that, because builders they just give us referral and they say that okay, we are taking care of that. Do we fill out individual identification for each client? Yes, sir. Separate form for each client. The Fintrac I fill up before comparing to your example now is different. Yes, actually, maybe the Fintrac you're talking about, those were the older ones. Now Fintrac forms are different. It has changed. So they are the newer version. Even the receipt of fund record, the second page you see that wasn't there before. Okay, one comment is from my friend. It's very funny, but I'm not gonna repeat it. He's just telling me from where I got this mic. You're wrong, Amarjeet. I bought this. He's thinking that I just took it from the temple. Unit 1107 movie. Okay, I just read the wrong message. Okay, okay, guys. So this is done today's webinar, and we will see you this Thursday in Mississauga office 6:30. And I discussed actually with AJ what we're doing. I forgot. Don't worry, we're gonna send you the email pretty soon. Thank you very much for joining, and really, really, I'm very thankful, and you're welcome for appreciating the webinars. And hopefully, we're gonna have a lot more like this, and we will see you this Thursday, 6:30 p.m. in Mississauga. I'm not gonna announce what it is. I'm just trying to remember. But it's gonna be either one of these. Either it's gonna be live listing presentation or it's gonna be live offer presentation. So I'm gonna decide by tomorrow morning, and then we'll send you the email. Good night. Bye bye.